Hi there, Celine here, and welcome to my channel. Feeling lonely, you are not alone. Just wants to talk a little bit on that topic today. It's sort of apt because I've spent a good few days more alone than usual because I hadn't been feeling that well last week, but I'm feeling a lot better now. And it caused me to reflect on my life and many periods of loneliness, periods of being alone when I wasn't lonely, which is like last week, and which has been like the last number of years in my life, which I'm very grateful and glad to say, because it's very painful, because I've experienced it. So if you're feeling that way, I'm really, really sorry to hear that. So many are, and I meet so many people, and the last few years have been very challenging too, as many people have been forced into isolation and particularly if you're living alone. So I just want to share a little bit about my experience and what changed, and some thoughts that might help give you maybe a different perspective or understanding or more empowering way of looking at the role that loneliness or being alone may play in your life. I always try to look at everything from a much higher perspective now, because there always is a higher perspective. We often don't understand it until afterwards. So yeah, just wanted to share a little bit today and hope that might help someone who's watching. As I said, I've experienced a lot of loneliness actually in my life, and I often talk about the period prior to my diagnosis with cancer, which was 2016, because that was when a big shift in terms of awareness and growth and evolution started to happen in me. And I was ready for it, because a lot of the way I was living was not fulfilling me any longer. And I had a lot of loneliness at different times. I won't go into all of them, but one big one would have been after my marriage broke down. And I was on my knees then. I'm very lonely and very alone, living alone, and really feeling I didn't belong or didn't fit in anywhere. And that can be, I think, the first experience we have of loneliness, because, we're all brought up to fit in some way into different systems, whether it be in school or college or work or marriage, families. I didn't have that. I didn't have the traditional family. So there were lots of different periods of loneliness. But what that is waking us up to, and what it was waking me up to, was, the fitting in and belonging has to happen with yourself first. We can look externally, which I know I did, and it's natural. But it's always going to be temporary, because life is always changing. So we can have wonderful times with people and experiences, but that's what they are. So that was the big shift that took place for me, even though I wasn't aware of it at the time, because the irony in it all was then I was diagnosed with cancer in 2016. I ended up living alone, and I wasn't lonely at all. And I haven't really been since then. And that is the truth. I've had a few moments and go, oh, it'd be lovely to have someone in my life, or to have this type of relationship, or different friends. And I have wonderful people in my life. It's just, but I also love being alone, really do. And the last week taught me that as well. And that's the difference that happened with me. I often, it's a crisis. So I don't know if you've been through something like this, and I don't believe that you have to be but it was my experience, because I was going so fast and filling every moment so that I wouldn't be alone and avoid that feeling of loneliness. So everything in my external world, obviously, as you can imagine, shut down. As I said, I was living alone. I had a lot of, so all of those, let's say, what's the word I'm trying to think of, stimulants nearly, and distractions were taken. And that caused me to sort of go inwards. And I mean by that, just really settling, my attention went inwards and into how I was feeling. And it started, even though there were ups and downs overall, there was sort of a breakdown and a breaking open is the only way I can describe it. I've said it before. And in that, I came into a sense of peace and stillness and quiet and harmony and, oneness with my source, is what I say, with God, the God self in me. And it really, even though I always knew this all my life, it really brought home to me, you're not just this physical body. We can forget this. So I had to come into that experience of when everything else and all the activity is taken away, what's left? Well, if that's all I was, then I'd be gone. And I wasn't. Here I was in this beautiful stillness and not feeling alone at all or lonely. And that has continued. So I would just, in terms of a few thoughts for you, or maybe just to consider in your own life, is just that whole where your focus is in terms of, I suppose, let's say solving, if that's the right word, this issue, if you're feeling very lonely. Is your focus on the outer world and looking for new people or situations, or filling up your diary, or trying now to make lots of arrangements or on lots of Zoom calls, or whatever it is to fill that feeling that maybe you have inside? It only works temporarily, is what I'd say, and maybe suggest that you look inwards. And if you find that difficult to even ask, what I often do sometimes when I go drawn back out into the outer world and I start comparing myself, not so much, but I can do it to others and going, oh, look at you and look at them and you're all alone or whatever. I just say, just help me come back into alignment. I say, I just ask to be brought back in and show me, if you've never experienced this feeling of being at one and knowing, that inner aspect of yourself, ask to be shown it. You will be shown it. That higher aspect of you will show you what it feels like, because it did it for me when I couldn't. And once you're sort of plugged back in, I don't believe that you ever plug back out. You might sort of drift in and out a little bit, but you're sort of home. And once you find your way home, you always know your way home. And even if you leave, you'll find your way back. And that's the beauty. So I would say turn your attention inwards, give it that time, that space. And even though you may be feeling lonely, it's usually covering up something, maybe some emotion or something else behind that, that needs to be released. So that you can really get in touch with the core of who you are. Also to recognize this can be something in more empowering way to look at it as well, because I've now, when I can look back, some of the periods of enforced aloneness, let's say, were often when I needed them, when I was going, I mightn't have felt it at the time, but often as well, when we're going through periods of great growth and change and awakening and development, we need to go inwards, even if we don't understand that, because all of this sort of reshuffling or recalibrating and has to happen in our inner world, and we have to integrate all of these changes before we can go back out in the world again in whatever we're meant to do. So just to allow yourself, you won't be in that position forever. I've even noticed in the last, so it's 6 years since I had cancer, and I found, I must say, the couple of years of lockdown not too difficult, because as I said, I've been sort of living in a more alone way and much more connected, and that got me into a lot of creativity and writing and lots of new things. So you're not, and new people. So just to know that you won't be left alone unless you choose it. But there are periods when we need that, and it goes, I see it in cycles now. I've gone into periods of being alone, then I'm back out, I meet new groups of people, and then something shifts in me again. And it can initially feel a little bit lonely if that's taken away, let's say, and just for different reasons. We're all growing and changing, and I believe that's the way it should be, very fluid and in flow. But even in the last couple of years, where I've connected with lots of new people and communities, and let's say spiritual communities, or when you think, oh, that's it, I found my people, but that's still going to keep changing. I suppose the key message in this for me is it's always inside. The answers are always inside. Your sense of completeness, wholeness, peace, calm, not being lonely are always inside. And the wonderful thing that I've noticed as well, and just to say to you, as you sort of trust this and work with it, And as I said, ask to be shown, and to do it regular, to keep asking to be shown, this connection with yourself. It'll start to grow and blossom like you would with any relationship. You have to work in any relationship, to work in the relationship with yourself and getting to know yourself. But what you find then, and I've really noticed the difference in the last few years, is the relationships and people that show up are people who sort of align with you, because it's all energetic. And then they will be people who also are coming from that place of completeness, in as much, we all have work and development and growing to do and healing in our life, but I feel much more self-sufficient in my life, in a sense, so that then the relationship you're meeting are people who are the same, so they're not codependent or with conditions on them or expectations on them. I find that very difficult now. I love to be in a very fluid flow place with people, and I would like that others feel the same from me, that I'm not sort of pulling out of them for things, because we have to find this within ourselves, and then we can support each other from a very connected, grounded place, and learn to live in that flow, because that is life, that conscious life, God force that is through all of us is always in motion. And once we're connected to it, we really learn to go with it, and we lose that sense of loneliness that really comes from when we forget who we are and our connection to our true selves. So I hope that maybe helps you in some way, and I hope you really tune in and find that connection in yourself, because I guarantee you, although you may be alone, you will not feel lonely, not too often anyways, because we're going to drift in and out of that. But yeah, so I wish you well, and as I said, I hope that helps a little if you are feeling lonely. And we're social creatures, we do need each other, so as I said, people will always show up, but as I said, you're coming from that place of connection in yourself. I forget to say this sometimes, but I'm going to say it now, just to please like and subscribe if you like my content, and please, share, if there's anything else you would like me to talk about, or anything, your perspective you'd like to share on this topic. And I have a free guide, 6 Signs You're Getting a Spiritual Wake-Up Call. If you'd like to get a copy of that, there's a link below. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Take care.